Hello everyone, and welcome back. Well, welcome for the last time, because as you probably know or noticed from the title, this is our finale. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because, I mean, it's been a year, really. And looking back on it, it's been an incredibly hard and difficult year. And this club was kind of designed to help, alleviate or at least entertain you and kind of take your mind off of what's going on outside for a couple hours each week. I hope I've been able to do that. And I hope that you've either discovered a new passion for cinema, started exploring new films for yourself, utilized this as a service to help you pick a movie each and every week, or found a new favorite film. I hope you've learned something, and I hope you found something that you love that you had never checked out before. And if you haven't checked out the rest of the episodes, I would highly, highly encourage it. Sure, some of these films may not be for you. That's up to your personal taste. But there's a lot of films here that I think we should be talking about, because it's worth learning about what got us to our current moment in cinema. And there's a lot going on. There's so many great films. We've covered films from the current year of when we were doing it, 2020, and we've already done bonus screenings of films that have come out this year. And while I would love to spend as much time behind this desk next year as I have this year, I just don't see that happening. And that's because as of yesterday, I just got my second dose of the vaccine, specifically the Moderna vaccine, for the disease, the pandemic known as COVID-19. I know that saying that out loud is going to get this video, shadow banned, but who cares? It's not about them. It's about us. We're here together. We're having a good time. It's just fun stuff for us. But after a year of seeing pretty much the same people for 365 days, it's very, very nice once a week to gather together and, have something in common to talk about, to watch, to at least for 2 hours or so, take our minds off of the pandemic outside. And with more and more people getting vaccinated, especially our club members, more and more of them getting vaccinated, the end of this pandemic is in sight. And so even if Movie Club were to return in 2021 in some capacity, it would be a different show. because this show was birthed out of an idea to, you know, fill a void of human interaction, because I honestly wasn't seeing a ton of people for quite a few months, especially during the summer of 2020, and I desperately needed human interaction. And the show provided that avenue for me. It provided me an outlet to continue being creative, to consistently be making videos at least once a week, most weeks. And for me, it was one of the few things that allowed me once a week to kind of pretend like things were normal, to pretend like the world wasn't coming to an end. And you know, that's kind of nice. But it's also been a year, because tonight, April 8th, as we push this episode out live to just a select few people, this is the 1-year anniversary of Movie Club starting. Now, if you weren't a part of our group to begin with, you just joined when we started posting them on YouTube and Instagram TV, IGTV for the lay people. This didn't start until late May. But for us, at least for 3 guys, including myself, we started this show on April 8th. A very, very rough draft of the show existed on that day. We hadn't invited a single person to the group. It was just the 3 guys who created it. 2 guys that I've known a good portion of my life now, and I would consider my best friends. Kent Gunn and Gavin Slay. Kent Gunn has been our projectionist for nearly every screening that we've done so far, so if you've ever been to a Movie Club live event, it's thanks to Kent that we don't look like idiots. Without him, we would have floundered by now. And you also know Gavin as the mysterious host of our counter program, Movie Place. And while we've had our spats over time, he has been so up to do pretty much literally anything I would throw at him, including putting what looked like cocaine on his face for a video that would go public. Most friends would say no, and I would completely understand. But he is one of the few people that I can always count to like throw a bit to him like 48 hours before it's going to go out, or a week before it's going to go out, and kind of, you know, pitch it back and forth and come up with an idea that works for both of us and I think accomplishes what we want. But a year ago today, the 3 of us sat down and we screened a movie, a short film, mind you, but a movie nonetheless, and we wanted to see if this could even work. And the following week, we invited our first club member, since, you know, it did work. Nearly every week since then, we have met to watch a movie. Of course, we've taken a couple weeks off for the holidays. I've taken a hiatus when my work got too busy, because in reality, I do have a very, very busy job. It truly has been a wild year for this show. And I have been immensely proud of every episode that we've put out, including the ones I didn't host. But without my 2 co-creators, you know, this show wouldn't be what it is. I think you honestly need, when you're creating something, to have people to bounce ideas off of, to see if something is completely ridiculous, and even if it is completely ridiculous, is it worth taking a stab at it? And I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. I hope you found a new favorite film. I hope it's been great. I hope you found, through this show, maybe at least a little bit, you felt a little bit less alone, because there's someone else on the other side of the screen talking to you. Because each week, though I shoot this completely isolated, no one's here. This is just me talking to a camera and a microphone. The process that I hate the most is sitting here without a live audience, without people that I'm responding to. Because this is sort of modeled after a late night talk show, and I imagine, much like all of the rest of the late night talk shows, it's very weird to like talk and have nobody responding to me. It's like the worst version of a podcast. It's just a white dude talking at you for 2 hours. There's not even someone else to listen to. It's just me. Well, I'm sure you could have found a better host for this show if you had programmed it yourself. You didn't, and I did. And I've really loved doing it for a year now. And getting to the end of a full 365 days where I've been painstakingly planning and creating, you know, movie series to like study cinema in its different forms, doing deep dives into wild films that from early cinema as well as more modern classics, having episodes that effectively could be a television program because of their length, But I hope that in the year that has preceded this moment right now, you've found some comfort in these episodes, because cinema unites us. It's these great engines of empathy. They allow us to look at people who don't exist and imagine ourselves in their shoes and experience lives that we would never live because of our cultural identities that separate us. It allows us to walk a mile in the shoes of people who have completely different living experiences than we do. And it allows us to empathize with these people and reach across these vast differences that often separate us and remind us that we are, in many ways, so much more similar than we are different. But it's our differences that make us beautiful and unique and make cinema something worth returning to. The things that excite me are all these new voices in cinema, especially Asian cinema and Korean cinema. Those are so exciting right now. And some of the newer voices, especially newer black voices that are finally getting a chance to express themselves in this medium that they've been denied for so much of their history. It's sad that it's just now getting to this point where we actually are having these people be able to make tentpole films. But if that doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. I am so excited for the future of cinema. I'm so excited for the future of cinema to look very different than it did in the 80s, where our tentpole directors were all white dudes. I'm excited to see all kinds of people represented on the screen, to experience new stories that are completely alien to me, but are so important and so recognizable within their own cultures. And what better way to express that than returning to the movie that started it all, the movie that kicked off our club. And I'm so glad that we set the tone so early on for what we would try and explore, the things that we try and tackle. And I love that this film pushed me out of my comfort zone. It made me engage with a culture that is not my own right off the bat. And that's why not only do I love this film, I'm so glad it was the one that we chose to start it all with. I can't think of a more poetic way to send Movie Club off than to return to where it all started, to borrow a phrase from a book that has no author, open at the close. And so first and foremost, I'd like to return to the headspace that I was in back in April of last year. Because April of last year felt like a different millennium than right now. Back then, we didn't know how long this was going to be. I think in April of last year, I thought this would be over in a couple months and then we'd all be back to normal by Christmas. Needless to say, things didn't go as planned. And all the holidays looked very different last year. I spent a lot of my time in this room trying to figure out what to do, especially during that middle part of the year. From the middle of March of last year until the start of August, I didn't work at all. I had no jobs. They were all gone. All the work that I typically do dried up overnight. The school that I work part-time at obviously went online. They don't need someone who needs to work in person at their facility to do any work. All the shows that I would work behind the scenes stopped happening. And so for quite a few months, I didn't do anything. And that probably explains why I needed something as distracting as Movie Club, and why the output so early on was so consistent on when it premiered. And more recently, since I actually have been doing work, I actually run up into problems of, I'm going to be working during the hours that I typically can edit, and things like that, and forcing me to take a hiatus or forcing me to reconfigure the way that we roll out episodes. But for a while, I just edited episodes. I just edit it once for the when we premiered it, and then I'd reconfigure it a little bit for when it went live for everyone else. I look back on some of my favorites extremely fondly, and even recent ones that I absolutely love. The King Kong one stands out. It's not I wouldn't argue it's a masterpiece of editing like some of my other ones. The fact that I was able to tell pretty much the entire story of a major cultural touchstone in cinema and bring you up to speed and how that character's evolved over the years, that was really fun for me. With all that being said, I'm gonna do what I actually promised to do, which is cover a film tonight. Let's pretend that we're going back all the way to April 8th, 2020. We don't know how long we're gonna be in this quarantine. We don't know what the future looks like. We're just gonna sit down and watch a movie and see if we can invite our friends to this in the future. I insisted that we watch a horror movie, of all things, at the beginning of an international pandemic. And what movie did I choose? Of course, the 2007 Spanish found footage horror film, directed by Paco Plaza and Jaume Balaguero, Rec. And when I say I love this film, wow, I love this movie. And it's clear that I love this movie because I bought the entire franchise on Blu-ray. And I'm so excited to return to not only the beginning of Movie Club, but to a fantastic collection, specifically a fantastic movie from 2007. A different time, but a movie that I think has stood the test of time and has continued to scare audiences. In fact, the other night when I mentioned to Kent that we were doing this was what we were doing for our anniversary, I think he was a bit reticent to return to this because it is a very well done movie. And a lot of you might be asking, why did you watch a horror film when you could just turn on the news and watch that? I think as a kid, I was scared of everything. I was scared of absolutely everything. I was scared of drowning. I was scared of getting lost in the woods. I was scared of the dark. I was scared of spiders. I'm still scared of most of that, but I've gotten better at hiding it. But horror movies have always been intriguing to me. The story that I like to tell a lot of people when I was a kid, when I was about 8 years old, there was this shelf in my parents' workroom where they have two desks, and they would, my dad would work on his computer and my mom had a space where she could do her scrapbooking. But in that same room was our family's library, where we would have bookshelves to put books that we'd finished already. In that room, we had a forbidden shelf, books that I was not allowed to touch, was not allowed to read, was not allowed to look at. Obviously, you know how banned books work. The second you ban a book, people want to read it all the more. The second you tell me something's forbidden, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna find a way. Life finds a way. And find a way it did, because eventually, I don't remember how my parents were out of the house, but they were out for an afternoon, and I was pretty much alone at the house, and I got a chair from the kitchen. I brought it into the room. I got up to that shelf and picked the smallest book I could find, because I thought, maybe I can finish this one before they get back. That book is the fantastic Stephen King novella, Cycle of the Werewolf. This book terrified me. And I know that if I open it, YouTube will get very mad, so I'm not going to do that. But this is one of my favorite books of all time, because I still love returning to it. And in fact, on every Hallows Eve, every Halloween night, I put on some nice storm ambiance with lightning in the background, and just sit down and read a classic scary tale from the King of Horror. It's one of my favorite things. It's one of my favorite traditions. And, at age 8, this book, specifically some of the images here, terrified me. I couldn't sleep for days. About a decade and change later, I finally got the guts to read it again. To read it, I guess, all the way through for the first time. And I love the story. I love the way it was told. And sure, it scared me. In fact, a lot of these movies do scare me. The thing is so do roller coasters, so do heights, but this feels like a safe scare. And in fact, one of my major theories for why humans love horror movies is earlier in man's existence, we lived out in the wilderness, and we were constantly under threat of being attacked by the things that we would try and eat eventually. We were, at least, it was a more even field when it came to dominance in the jungle. And since then, we still have that weird evolutionary need to be scared, to be frightened, to feel like, there's a bit of excitement in our lives. And day to day, especially people who work in predominantly office jobs, 9-to-5 things, that excitement isn't really there. And they need some sort of avenue to get that energy out, to deal with that. And I think horror movies provide this very unique way to deal with it. It's like a roller coaster. You get on a roller coaster and you believe that you're safe. But in the moment when you're on that roller coaster, when you're going down that hill, when you're careening through a loop, or doing an inversion, it doesn't feel safe. But deep down it is. And that's why I think horror movies throughout the decades, especially even in early cinema, were so important. We need these scares because it reminds us who we are when the lights are out. It reminds us that we're alive. Because coming face to face with death is often the things that makes us reevaluate our priorities and sometimes fix things in our lives that we didn't realize we needed to fix. And horror movies consistently provide this lens. But horror movies also allow us to engage with more taboo topics and think about things like death in a way that feels maybe slightly less scary than, in a drama film where you have to witness the death of a father and just breaks you, or that opening scene in Up, which destroys you forever and still has taken a part of my soul that I'm never going to get back. Horror movies, on the other hand, have a bit more of a callous way of dealing with death, or even if they do deal with death and it's a huge emotional moment, it's done in a way that makes it, maybe a little bit less scary. Because it's so prevalent, you start to maybe not get numb to it, but realize death comes for us all one day. And personally, I'd like to greet death like an old friend. But now to the movie at hand. Rec was a movie that came out in 2007 and was directed by Paco, Plaza, and Jaume Balaguero. They continued to direct the rest of the franchise, especially the sequel. They reteamed again, and then in the third and fourth installments, they took turns making their own unique ways of continuing this universe they'd already created. The way that they use found footage is so unique and feels so immediate and real. You'll probably notice that there's not a single bit of music in this film. There's no score here. The only music that we ever get is diegetic, which means, in layman's terms, it's just part of the scene. So like either a character is singing or performing a song, or it's playing on a radio or something like that. That's the only music we get in this movie. The story effectively is that we get this news reporter who makes a program for late at night covering people who work throughout the evenings. And specifically this time she's chosen to cover a group of firefighters. When they get called to the scene of an emergency in an apartment building, she follows along to cover the ins and outs of their job. And then the government comes in and locks down the apartment building, saying that they need to quarantine this place because some virus might have gotten out. They need to make sure that it is kept tightly in this space so that way it doesn't escape and hurt other people. Now, as you can imagine, this might not have been the wisest film to pick at the beginning of a pandemic. But I was not alone in choosing to watch this film, or at least a variant of it. In fact, many people chose either Steven Soderbergh's Contagion or the American remake of this film, Quarantine, for obvious reasons. And here's the part where I take a big dump all over that American remake, because effectively, America remade that film, Rec, within a year because they don't like reading subtitles. Grow up, America! And they didn't even do it as well. It's so frustrating because it's a remake that is so paint by the numbers, so exactly the same, and it's, I think, maybe slightly better shot, and that it feels more studio. And that's really disappointing because the raw energy of the original Rec is what makes it feel so alive, makes it feel so real, and made critics really like it. In fact, the original Rec holds an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not only a really good number for just any old film, that's an amazing number for a horror film, which typically lands down in the 60s to low 70s, because that's that other genre that we don't want to really respect, and we're not ever going to consider it when it comes to awards, despite the fact that Toni Collette and Florence Pugh deserved awards for their performances in both of those Ari Aster pictures, or any other variety of actors who gave their all in a horror film and totally deserve the nomination. But I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I'm fine. I'm fine. I promise I'm fine. But America saw something great with Rec and was like, that's mine. I'm gonna remake it and change all the words to English and remove all that great cultural context from the Spanish horror film and make it just an average American movie. The cultural part of this movie is what makes it so interesting, makes it so real. It feels lived in. And part of that is due to the fact that they cast this film so well. These aren't your professional actors. These aren't people who are in a ton of big name Spanish movies, or any movies really, all that much. In fact, our main character here, played by Manuela Valeska, was a television reporter at one point. She did that for a living, and so she feels so authentic in her role as Angela Vidal here. Bring in real firefighters, a couple lesser known actors, and avoiding really a normal script. Just giving people and actors beats to hit and telling them to improv the dialogue on the day allowed for a lot of this free-form exchange that feels so real, and these conversations that don't feel rehearsed or theatrical but feel authentic. It's this commitment to authenticity that makes this film so amazing. I mean, horror's always really been a fringe genre. It doesn't really get awards recognition, as I previously said. But critics don't like to take it seriously either. They like to think of it as like trash art, just like some pop thing that some people are interested in, some really messed up, weird people. That's not me at all. I'm totally normal. I'm very well adjusted, as you can tell. I haven't been yelling at a camera for a year now in my room. That sounds really bad. But it's also using a kind of a genre that in 2007 had mostly been done to death. 2007, doing a found footage film was a bit weird. Back in 1999, using that kind of style with the Blair Witch Project, which was revolutionary for the time and still is a very effective scare factory in my opinion. And I've defended it to, random strangers on the internet before. And just throw that up, editor me later. I talked with a musician about why I thought that movie was important. I don't know why I did it. I'm passionate about the genre, and I'm willing to defend pretty much anything. But in 1999, using that type of freeform filmmaking for the Blair Witch Project made it feel really real and authentic. I mean, on top of that, using pretty much unknown actors and effectively giving them a contract that made it to where they couldn't appear in anything major after that for a couple months, so that way it really gave the appearance that they disappeared off the face of the earth. Yeah, it's pretty authentic and it's pretty well done. And the incredible marketing stunt that they pulled by creating a website that added to the lore of the Blair Witch and made this feel like a real world that people were entering into. And the fact that in 1999 people didn't really know what happened or if it was real or not. A similar tactic was used with Cloverfield, which came out around the same time as Rec, and that also blew audiences away by allowing them to engage on the internet and, dig into the story of this creature and all these hidden government conspiracies. That was fun. Back in 1999, at the dawn of the internet, Blair Witch was doing it first. Cloverfield did it better and pushed harder and had, a bigger budget to deal with. But in 2007, found footage had been done to death. Now, I'm not saying the Blair Witch was the first found footage film. That came way before that and was probably most notably used in a fair section of the movie Cannibal Holocaust, which we will never cover here because I don't want to watch it. At least academically. I just want to study it for me, not for you. I wouldn't do that to you. I like you too much. I need to deal with this so I can take it to my therapist. You can just enjoy not ever having to see that. By 2007, the found footage genre or subgenre of horror had been done to death, and so the fact that they kind of rejuvenated and revitalized it made way for future films that could do this well again. Also because of its extensive long takes, takes that run 6 or 7 minutes at a time. These are complicated shots that feel real and unrehearsed, but clearly had to have been in order to get these incredible movements and performances and all these actors hitting the right beats at the same time. These extensive takes also contributed to, like 16-hour days on set, but I think the end result is totally worth it. Another thing that adds to the authenticity of this world is they use a real fire station, they use a real apartment building. These are real locations, they're not studio sets, which the American version used. Sure, they built an entire apartment building in a studio, but it feels more studio made, and the higher quality image with the better camera removes a lot of that authenticity, and also the fact that we recognize all these actors. It takes us a little bit out of it. Another thing that I think makes this film so great is that it clocks in at just 75 minutes. So it's an experience. It's a roller coaster ride from start to finish. You go and it doesn't stop moving until you reach that climactic and iconic ending. And because of its length, it doesn't ever overstay its welcome. This is a movie that knows what it wants to be and does it extremely well. And by utilizing the culture around it that it was made in, it helps bring to life the authenticity of this world. These are real people that are experiencing something traumatic. And that's what makes this place so interesting. That's what makes this world so much fun to live in, so much fun to experience, even if it is horrifying. And despite the fact that we are in a much different place than when we first screened this film here at Movie Club a year ago today, this is still a film that I think will be a bit of an escapist type experience. It's a pandemic that by the end we understand, and it feels in many ways more conquerable. I mean, 4 movies that barely hit 90 minutes a pop, I mean, that's an achievable thing to consume. This is something that is fun and propulsive and tells its story, tells it well, and tells it quickly. This is economy and storytelling 101 right here. If you want to learn from masters of getting across a story at its base essentials and doing it quickly, I think you would be hard-pressed to find something that does it better than Rec at its cool 75-minute runtime. These directors understand the culture in which they're making the film, and you know what? It feels authentic even not living there. Even being an American coming to this film out of its cultural context, it feels so authentic because they put so much care into how they built this world. They took so much care in deciding on the locations. They took so much care in designing situations to cultivate authentic reactions from either non-actors or actors that are not super well known. And because they're not well known, and because these are people who are so committed to their roles, it feels so real. And I know I've said that a lot, but that's something that's compelling in a story. Even now, when I watch movies with Tom Hanks, as much as I love the guy and think he's a super talented actor, when I look at him, I'm like, I know who that is, that's Tom Hanks, and he's playing Mr. Rogers. That's fine, he's a great actor, he still does excellent in that role, but it's nice to watch a movie where you don't know anyone, you don't recognize a single one of these people, and so it feels like it could be real. And I think that's what makes The Terror so effective too. I mean, we all want to escape quarantine ourselves at this point. And the best thing you can do to accomplish that is going out and getting vaccinated now. It's important to do your job so that we can finally escape this too. Because we all want this story to have a happy ending. We all want to get back to our lives. And you can do something about that. You can do something today to start the hard work to getting us back to a new normal. Things won't return immediately to how it was pre-pandemic, but we can start having some things that we've been desperately missing. It's been over a year since I've seen a movie in the theaters. Over a year. Back in March, I ended my last film, Emma, and went home and booked a ticket for the next day to see Onward. And then I woke up to an email saying that that ticket was canceled and AMC was shutting down nationwide. And things haven't been the same since. Sure, theaters are starting to open back up, but I still don't feel safe going, especially knowing that a lot of people in my home state aren't getting vaccinated, at least right now. Now that things are opening up to everybody, I really hope we're going to start seeing a rise in vaccinations. I really want to start seeing real people in the real world again. I want to escape our quarantine. I want to go back to some of the things that I loved and have been desperately missing. Small things. I remember going to coffee shops by myself, working on a script or something like that. That was so much fun. I miss that. I desperately want to get back to doing that. And I desperately want to get back to hanging out with people over coffee and chatting about life and shooting the breeze. I miss that. I miss going to concerts so much. And I desperately miss seeing movies in the theater. That is something that I cannot wait till the day that we can finally do that again and feel safe. I'm so excited that we're this close. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you want this story to end happy, there's something you can do today to make it work. When we watched that movie a year ago today, I thought our experience with the COVID-19 pandemic would be over as quick as that movie. It clearly didn't happen, but here we are again, a year later. and it looks like we're finally turning to the last page of the script. And I'm so excited to end these awful days spending time alone, and I can't wait to not have to do movie club anymore because we're in the same room together. So that's it. That's the end of movie club. I don't know when we'll see each other again, but I'm sure we'll meet again. And I hope that the next time we see each other is either at my house watching a movie on the big screen, or I turn to my left when I sit down in the theater and the lights dim and I see you there, because we can do that again. I hope the next time that we see each other face to face, we get to chat about experiences that in 2020 would have been alien to us. About travel, about hanging out with families, about not having to worry about mask mandates and all those things that have been so stressful over the past year. I can't wait to not have to talk about that. And I can't wait to see your smiling faces again when they're not covered by masks. I'm so excited for that day, and I know that happy ending is right around the corner. And with that, that brings us to the conclusion of Movie Club. It has been my honor and my privilege for the past year to either help cultivate a new love of cinema for you, to expose you to films that you'd never have checked out on your own that maybe now are a new favorite, or educate you about a medium that you enjoy but didn't really have any technical knowledge about. I hope you learned something. I really do. Because I sure have. I have been able to experience cinema with people even at a distance, and that's been incredibly nice for me. In a year that otherwise would have been very lonely, even though I am shooting this in a room by myself right now, I don't feel alone for the first time in like a year. And that's so nice. I'm so excited to finally be telling you about that new movie I just saw in the theater in IMAX, that awesome experience I had meeting up with an old friend from college over coffee. I can't wait to tell you about those things. I can't wait to travel and see you guys in the cities that you live. Most of all, I just can't wait to see you again. And so, whether you've watched a single episode of the show or if you've watched every episode since the beginning, thank you for being a part of our club. I hope you enjoy, as the lights come up and you leave the theater, you're reminded that the world has a new time, that we can commit to doing the hard things because they're the right thing. That we can commit to doing what's right for other people. That we, despite our differences, are much more similar than we ever dared imagine. And that means that even though in a year that we've been separate, we aren't alone. I've never been a good one at goodbyes, and so I'm not even going to try and write my own. There's no script left. I'm just rambling at this point. I'm not going to try and come up with my own way. I'm just going to steal it from a great movie from the 90s because they said it better than ever I could. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Okay. Two, three, four. Should I stay or should I go now? Should I stay or should I go now? If I go, it will be trouble. If I stay, there will be double. But you got to let me know. Should I stay or should I go? Darling, you've got to let me know. Should I stay or should I go? If you say that you are mine, I'll be here to the end.
end of time. So you've got to let me know. Should I stay or should I go? It's always tease, tease, tease. You're only happy when I'm on my knees.